And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed. To you it shall be for food. Genesis 1:29. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Psalm 78:25. Everyday Manna with Lisa.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Everyday Manna. Today we are going to make a Szechuan chicken and pepper stir fry. To go alongside that, we're going to have an Asian Napa cabbage dish. And for dessert, we're going to make a tropical bread cupcake. So let's get started on dessert, because that actually takes longer than the chicken and the cabbage. So in this bowl, I have one box of just a yellow cake mix, whatever kind is your favorite. And I have 1 cup of evaporated milk. Now that is the milk that you buy in the cans in the baking aisle, where you get the flour and sugar and all that. You will see a cans that say evaporated milk. Don't mistake that for the sweetened condensed milk. They're two entirely different things, but the evaporated milk is what I'm using today. And then I have 1 can, this is an 8-ounce can of crushed pineapple, undrained. Leave the juices in there. And then I have some coconut, about half a cup of sweetened coconut. I'm going to add a little bit of freshly grated nutmeg, just maybe 1/4 teaspoon, just a little bit. And this is one of those things that I always grate fresh. I never buy pre-grated nutmeg. I just think it tastes so much better fresh. So we've got our nutmeg. And then I have 2 eggs that I'm going to break into this other bowl and lightly beat them before I put them in my cake mix there. So we're going to add our eggs to our bowl. And here's a little hint for you. If you will not hit your egg on the side of your dish, but on a flat surface, you are less likely to get shell shards in the egg. It breaks cleaner. Just lightly beat these before you add them to your cake mix. This is such an easy recipe. And originally, I made this baking it in loaf pans as a bread. It's a tropical bread. But sometimes I don't have the 1.5 that it takes to bake that. So I make it into cupcakes. It's delicious that way and a whole lot faster, but you can do it either way. So you can either make about 24 cupcakes, or you can make 2 loaves of bread, whichever you choose to do. I'm just using a little hand mixer. I'm going to scrape down the sides. Just get all that mixed together till you don't see any dry cake mix left. And that's it. And then you can clean off your beaters. Come on, you. There we go. Now I have 2 12-count muffin tins that I have sprayed with nonstick cooking spray, but you can also use little muffin tin liners, or you can bake it in 2 loaf pans, whichever you prefer to do. When I'm doing cupcakes, I find it easier if I use a scoop, and that way I know I'm getting it even. So this is a 1/4 cup scoop. You want to fill these about 1/2 to 3/4. For this muffin tin, a 1/4 cup is perfect. And you just put it in each one. Again, I have sprayed this with nonstick spray. You could mix up the fruit if you wanted to. If you don't want to use pineapple, you could use chopped up peaches, or like a can of peaches, like 8 ounces of peaches with the juice. Chop them up really fine. Or you could use mango, whatever kind of tropical fruit that you wanted to use. Really, you could use any fruit. It doesn't have to be a tropical fruit. You could use anything. And I like to have a small little rubber spatula to help it come out of the scoop. Get your oven preheated to 325 degrees. And we will bake these. And these bake, now again, the bread takes about an hour and a half. But if you bake it in the cupcakes, about 25 minutes or until a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean. Either, about 25 minutes will do it. But you see how it's just so much easier when you use a scoop. I do all kinds of these little quick breads. I find them easy, and they're sweet enough, of course, obviously, to be dessert, or even warmed up the next morning for breakfast would be good, or just a snack, whatever kind of time of day you want to eat it. And just because it says bread doesn't mean it's like sandwich bread. This is just baked in a bread loaf normally. But this makes about 24 cupcakes, depending on the size. I've got several. I've got the little mini cupcake tins. I've got big jumbo cupcakes. I even have pans that make the tops. You know how a lot of people like the muffin tops, the kind that get crispy? They make pans for that. But these are just standard muffin tins. And you could use liners again if you wanted to. I'm just not. Get your oven preheated again to 325. Fill them half to 3/4 full because they're going to rise. And 24 cupcakes will be ready to go in just a few minutes. We'll glaze these when they come out of the oven. You could also add some nuts if you wanted to. You could add some chopped up pecans or macadamia nuts or whatever you wanted to add to it. Clean up there a little bit. Now, 325 degrees, and I would rotate these pans about halfway through the baking. And what I like to do is kind of put one on one side of the oven and one on the other so the air can circulate a little more evenly. We'll time it for about 15 minutes, but what we're going to do is about 7 minutes, we will swap those pans and put the ones that we put on the bottom on the top and the top on the bottom, and also turn them around. So I'm going to take a quick break, clean this up. When I come back, we're going to start on our chicken, and then when they come out of the oven, we will make the glaze to go on top. So I'll be back in just a second. Alrighty, now I have here on a plastic cutting board, I've got these rubber gloves on my hands, 4 chicken breasts. These were kind of small, so I got 4, but if you've got really big ones, you might only need 2. And these are boneless, skinless chicken breasts, and you could use boneless, skinless thighs if you wanted to. And I'm going to cut them into bite-sized pieces to where we're going to stir fry these. If you wanted to use like boneless pork tenderloin, you could do that too. I like this with chicken. I love stir fry. I love Asian food of any kind, but I find with stir fries, you can make them so quick at home that you can really, it's a fast dinner. This one can be on the table in under 30 minutes from start to finish. And I would serve this with some rice or some kind of a noodle, an Asian noodle would be fine, or those little chow mein noodles that you can get that a lot of people put in their salad. This is good over that too. I've had it over those. Either way, whatever you like. I love Chinese food, and I cook it at home all the time because I find, honestly, that most, not all, but most Chinese restaurants, it doesn't taste good to me. So I find you can make it at home a whole lot easier, a whole lot cheaper, and then you know what's going in it. And this is just an easy stir fry that just takes minutes. I've got my large skillet here preheating because I don't have a wok. I don't need a wok. A large skillet actually does just as good, if not better, because you've got more surface to get the browning on, which I like. So I've got this preheated to medium high, more high than medium heat. I'm going to add some vegetable oil or canola oil or peanut oil if you have it. Would be very traditional. I don't normally stock peanut oil in my kitchen because I find I don't use it often enough, and for me it goes rancid before I can get it, ready to go. So when that oil is shimmering, the key to stir frying, there's a couple of different keys. You want to make sure that your pieces are cut to the same size, and you want to make sure that that pan is hot before you add your food. And if you want to, and I've got it down here, have a splatter guard nearby to kind of, cover it to keep the grease from splattering out on you. We're going to add this. Stand back as you add because it can splatter and you don't want to get hot grease on you. In an even layer. That piece has got a little bone in there. Even though it said boneless, skinless, it had a little bit of cartilage, I guess it would be more of. And I like to just kind of scatter this around. Don't move it. Leave it alone, because what happens is you want to let that caramelize. Now, immediately you can get it in a single layer if you want to, and then leave it alone. Let me get that out of my way. So you can take your spatula and kind of make sure that it's in one even little layer, but then leave it alone. Don't mess with it, because you won't get that browning if you keep messing with it. Now, I am going to add just a little bit of salt and pepper, just a little bit. This is to taste. This is not pre-ground. This is whole peppercorns that I have ground in bulk because I use a lot of pepper. I have a little spice mill that I do that with. And then kosher salt, just a little bit over top. And by the way, here's just a little cooking hint. If you will hold your hand up over your food, you get a much more even disbursement of the chicken or the salt. I'm actually going to put that on there to keep it from making such a mess. Now, I've got 3 different color peppers. I have a red one, a yellow one, and a green one, because I want that color variety in my dish. I'm going to seed these, and I'm going to cut them into strips. If you have some green onions, you could use green onions. I didn't have any today, so I'm just using a white onion, but you could use a yellow onion or a red onion or little green onions. These are kind of long, so I'm going to cut them in half just to make them a little more bite-size friendly. You cut them into whatever shape you like. I always cut my peppers from the inside. Makes it easier. I love peppers, and I like to use a variety of colors, more for the appearance, but they also do have different flavors. The red pepper is simply a green pepper that's been left on the vine to ripen, and it is much sweeter. There's a little bit of bitter, not horribly bitter, but a little more bitterness in the green pepper than in the red pepper. Red peppers are very sweet, and I find the yellow peppers are very sweet too. So you could use, the variety like I'm doing, or you could use all one color. Whatever you want to do is fine. Hear that sizzling away. If you don't hear the sizzling when you put your chicken or whatever you're frying in your pan is not hot enough. And you will not get as good a browning, and it might take longer for it to cook. So I'm just chopping these up. We didn't forget our cupcakes. We're going to rotate those out in just a minute. Just line them up and cut them in half. I work beside my stove so that my chopping, and I can keep an eye on that at the same time. I do encourage you to do that if at all possible in your kitchen. And invest in a good cutting board. I can't tell you how important a good cutting board is to your cooking. It really helps. I've got 1 white onion here that I'm going to just slice. I cut it in half. I'm taking out that outer layer. And then I'm just going to slice it into thin little layers here. Our chicken, smelling good. Okay, so all of our prep work is done. Our onion is cut, our peppers are cut. Let's check on our chicken. Let's get a little bit of a, turn this over. Now, look here, you see that light browning that we've got on that chicken? That's what you want. I don't want it to be golden brown. I just want that little bit of a light brown coloring. So we want to gently, stand back, toss this in the oil. I'm going to use my little spatula here. Now do you see why I like a flat skillet as opposed to a wok? We just don't have, here in America, for the most part, we don't have hot enough stovetops like they do elsewhere in restaurants, and even in China they have more of a butane type heat source to where we can get that intense heat to use the wok. So I just use the skillet. I find it easy. You know, you can adapt your cooking in your kitchen to suit what your needs are. All I'm going to do is just let that cook. I'm going to rotate those pans, and when I come back, we're going to finish this up and get the quickest, easiest side dish ready to go. I'll be back in just a second. Alrighty, welcome back. Now, our chicken is good and browned up. It's not quite cooked through, of course, but it's browning. And I'm going to go ahead and add my peppers and onions to that so that it can be cooking too, or they can be cooking too. Just add them in there. Mix that up a little bit. Look how pretty that looks with all those colors in there. And we're going to let that go with our thing on. I don't want to get splattered everywhere. We're just going to let that go for about 3 or 4 minutes. Okay. All righty. Now, for our side dish, we are going to make something I bet many of you have never eaten. We have a big head here of Napa cabbage. Now, it's found right beside the regular compact green head. It's elongated, it's longer and slimmer, and you'll see it has kind of crinkly leaves. It is a milder flavored, it's a cross, I guess, between like a lettuce and a cabbage. It's much, much firmer than lettuce, but much less firm than the traditional green cabbage, and it's got a milder flavor. So if you don't like traditional cabbage flavors, try the Napa, because it really is very good. And I've cut this in half, and I cut out the core, and I'm just going to cut these into bite-sized pieces. If you don't have Napa cabbage, you can use regular green cabbage. Just cut it into chunks. If you wanted to do this very same recipe with bok choy, you could do it with bok choy too. I've got a non-stick skillet here heated, and I'm going to add some, I've added some, again, canola oil, and I'm going to add my cabbage as I cut it, because this is a big head of cabbage. I'm only going to use half. I love Napa cabbage. You can also use this to make coleslaw too. It's delicious. It's just milder in flavor. It's falling apart because I cut the core out. That's okay. You want to cut that core out. Just cut it into bite-sized pieces. Let's cut you up a little bit. Might be easier, I guess, to leave the core in until you cut it. There you go. I'm only going to use half because this was a huge head of cabbage. I'm just going to let that kind of lightly saute. Let's check our peppers. That's on like medium-high heat also. Oh, smells so good. Now, we're going to make a sauce to go in this. I have here some soy sauce. I'm going to add some mirin, which you find in the Asian section by the rice vinegars and the sesame oils. Rice vinegar, a little bit of sugar to kind of balance out the heat. Now, if you have red pepper flakes, you could use that. I was out today, and I just want to tell you, you can substitute any kind of a hot chili oil, or even like a couple of teaspoons of the hot sauce if you don't have any red pepper flakes. And this is ground ginger, not ground ginger, chopped up ginger. For those of you that don't know, ginger comes as a root like this, and you just peel off that outer edge with a spoon and then grate it on a microplane, or you can buy it now pre-ground in a tube in the produce department, which I use real often anymore. Just kind of stir that together and pour that in your chicken mixture. Stir it around. That just adds some flavor. Oh, that's so good. Then we're going to thicken this up. This is almost done. I've got a little bit of water and a little bit of cornstarch here that I'm just going to mix that together with a little tiny whisk and then put this in there. And then that will thicken up the ginger sauce that we just made and make a glaze for your chicken, and your chicken dish is done. You can have that on the table in no time for your dinner. Now let's just turn that down and let that sit. That's done. Matter of fact, I think I'll just turn the heat off. Now our cabbage is sauteing. I switched out the pans, rotated the pans. We need to make a little quick sauce for our cabbage. Get my dishes in the sink here. And for that, we have, matter of fact, I think I'll just use this same ginger jar, it's fine. Some red wine vinegar for a little acidity. Some more ginger. I use a lot of ginger. I love the flavor of freshly ground ginger. Some soy sauce. Some sugar to balance out the heat. A lot of your Asian recipes they balance out that sweet and salty and hot flavors. A tiny, tiny bit of hot chili oil. This stuff is very hot. If you want, this is not necessary, but if you wanted to add some toasted sesame oil, you can. I personally love it, so I do add it. I'm just going to put that in there. And then just stir that around. And that liquid will help soften up the cabbage. It just needs to cook for 3 to 5 minutes and it's done. It does not take long to cook this meal. You could add in some peppers to this if you wanted, or some carrots. If you wanted to sliver up some carrots and add to it, you could. Whatever you wanted to put in there, you could put in there. If you're ever in an area where you find an Asian grocery store, I encourage you to go in and just walk through. You may not know what half of that stuff is for, but that's okay. It is so interesting to go through all the different kinds of grocery stores. I love to do that. Now, let's make our glaze for our cupcakes. To do that, you need some powdered sugar. I have a skillet here that I'm not going to add any heat, nothing. It's a nonstick skillet. I'm going to toast up a little bit of coconut. You could also do this in the oven. I'm just going to do it on the stove top with a little small pan till it gets good and brown. Just keep an eye on it. I've got some powdered sugar, and to that, I'm going to get a bigger whisk. I'm going to add, again, some of the evaporated milk, because I only used a cup in the cupcake recipe, so I had some left, and I'm just adding it to this. If you don't have evaporated milk, you could use milk. And just stir that together until it comes to a glaze. And that's all there is to it. See how it just, that's perfect. Set that to the side. All right, we're just gonna toast this coconut, saute that cabbage, and then the best part, we're gonna eat. Alrighty, now everything is done. I want to show you how to check to see if your baked goods are done. Take a toothpick or a skewer or something, insert it in the center, and if it comes out clean, even if it's got a little crumb on there, that's okay. As long as there's no moisture, then you know it's done. And what I like to do while it's warm, get the coconut off the heat, is take some of my glaze and just drizzle it over top of your cupcake. However much you like, whatever you like. And then take a little bit of your toasted coconut. You don't have to toast the coconut if you don't want to. I just think it adds a little bit of color to it. A little bit of flavor, a little bit of color. And add your toasted coconut, and there you go. There's a wonderful little tropical bread. If you're making it as a bread, just pour the glaze over the loaf when you take it out of the pan. Now, let's have our wonderful Napa cabbage. Such a good dish. And you could serve this again with some rice if you wanted. And the final touch to our chicken is to top it with some cashews. You could use almonds if you wanted to, or cashews, or even peanuts. Whatever you wanted to use would be fine. And then that's it, and your dish is done. Again, I would serve it over some rice or chow mein noodles or something. Be sure you get some of that sauce. Some of those beautiful colors of peppers on top. And you have got a wonderful Chinese meal that you could serve any day of the week. This is the Szechuan chicken stir fry with peppers, an Asian Napa cabbage, and a tropical bread cupcake. Thank you for joining with me, and I will see you next time on Everyday Manna.
Thank you for watching Everyday Manna with Lisa. This program is made possible by viewers like you. Your support is continually needed to keep Christian programming on the air. Please send your best financial gift to Living Faith Television in care of Everyday Manna, P.O. Box 1867, Abingdon, Virginia 24212.